What is up, guys? Micah here, coming back at you with another lesson. And this is a clip out of an interview that I did with one of my instructors here, a phenomenal guitar player. His name is Seth and he's a full-time guitar player, and he's one of the first guys that I like to hire if he's available when I need a little extra guitar help on a gig or something like that. Seth is the kind of guy who never runs out of ideas. He's just always got something amazing to add to whatever is going on in the session. And what I want to do is give you some insight from some of his perspective on guitar playing. Now, his interview part, at least this little clip, is a long interview. The clip is about 13 minutes and 40-ish seconds. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the talking points that we did, just to give you a better idea of how you can take of some things you can take away and what to do with those at the end of it. So I hope you stay tuned for that. If you just want to hear his part, like I said, it's only about 13 minutes and 40 seconds long. So it's coming up right here. Now, real quick, this is the kind of guy who, and I'm just looking at my notes here, you can jam along in a situation that you've never necessarily been in, but you can get in that situation and it just sounds like you've been playing. And he's going to be sharing some of those things with you right here. He's going to give you some ideas, some really easy ideas for starting out solos. Also learning how to anticipate what's coming next by listening. I'm going to be giving you some ideas as far as easy ways that you can use to learn songs yourself. And then also some tips that he took from college about just learning guitar and training your ear on how to listen and on how to interpret things that you may be hearing with a song or with other guitar players and whatnot. Anyways, so with that being said, let's dive on in. Here's Seth. Back to just say a few times when you've played with me, because I normally play in a three-piece band. I'm the guitar player, a bass player, and a drummer. We get on sometimes I get some gigs and we need a little bit bigger band, and Seth might be one of the first guys that I call to be my other guitar player, because like I said, Seth is a phenomenal lead guitar player. And we don't rehearse. We don't rehearse what we're going to play. I'll send you a set list that you'll look over, and you might already know a lot of the songs, but there's definitely going to be a few songs that you've never played and probably never heard. But how does a guy get through something like that? Because you don't worry about it. You don't balk it. And one thing, and you can chime in after I say this, if you want to, but when you understand, like you were saying, when you understand music, you become a musician. I can look over at you at solo time, and I can just tell you, even if the chord progression changed over the solo, I can tell you at the same time, it's a B minor, it's a D minor, it's a C, it's a, and immediately your brain is moving along with us. You're not just stuck in, G major or whatever. You're not just stuck playing up and down a scale.
Changes, right? That's the jazz dudes call it. You're playing through the changes.
You're playing through the changes,
right?
And people don't understand that, but that's what we're all wanting to be able to do, as far as playing music, and that's exactly what you're saying when you're trying to make your students become musicians, understand what they're doing, why they're doing it,
right, how things work together. Yeah, any kind of stuff like that is knocking on the door of kind of improvisation. You know what I mean? And if you're going to get to the point where you want to start being able to improv on your instrument, the first thing you got to do, and I mean it sounds simple, you have to listen. to what's going on around you. That's the number one thing. You know what I mean? So like you might think when we were playing those gigs or whatever that it's like, you know, it's like, well, he might not know where it's going right there, but just based off of the chords of the song or where something was going, you kind of have an anticipation of, say, where the solo might go. Or now, unless it's like just some bridge that changes key and modulates, like, you know, like some Billy Joel or something weird.
Yeah.
That can just kind of catch you completely off guard. But, you know, it's when you're listening to music, music's dropping a lot of little hints along the way. Like from an intro to a verse to a chorus, there's a lot of little hints that are letting you know where to go, what to do, you know? So the main thing you want to do is we want to listen. And I'd start off by listening to the guy who's singing. You know? Yeah. Whatever he's singing is going to be an awesome first way to start your solo. So if he sings da 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 da, you come in na 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 na, you know, just something like that.
Yeah.
So, you know, look for other things you want to listen, because I'm stealing rhythmic ideas from everybody around me, right? You know what I mean? That, and then it's also just having done the homework, okay? And when I say done the homework, how can you do homework for something you're not anticipating? You don't know you're going to play the song. How you do the homework? It's the idea of knowing that if I'm in this key, if these are the chords that are being played, I have this well to draw from. You know what I mean? It's not like you hear a song that's in D major or something like that, and you immediately have to think of everything in D you've ever thought. It's like it closes down a whole lot of stuff just based off of what surrounds, what key the song's in, what kind of chords they're using, the style of music you're playing. Mm-hmm. All that kind of takes into, you know, it's something like, it gets back to the point of what I'm saying. You're making a lot of split-second decisions when you're doing that kind of stuff. But you can make those decisions because you've done the homework, right? You spent your practice time learning, say, this is what this scale sounds like over a chord progression that goes like this, you know?
Yeah.
Anybody that plays music long enough starts noticing that you're going to run into some similarities between things, right? Yeah. I mean, Basket Case by Green Day is the exact same thing as Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue by Toby Keith. Same chord progression. It's the same chord progression to the key, to everything.
That's good to know.
You know what I mean? So it's like, that's two completely different songs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just an example. It's like you'll start seeing things get used and recycled and repeated in different ways. And you'll start noticing that more and more because you've done the homework. You've seen, you know, I played, you know, Green Day songs when I was 15 because I love Green Day. The older I get, I have to play stuff like, you know, the Toby Keith songs or whatnot. But it's like, as soon as you play it, you're like, oh, well, this is just a Basket Case slowed down.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same chord progression, same, you know, chunking palm muted thing. So, yeah. Like I say, you'll run across a lot of things, and you know, you kind of make it almost like a living library in your head. Guitar players are great. You know, we're not readers. We're not music readers. Not a ton of guitar players going to sit down and read music back to you. But what do? We memorize things, right? Yeah. So you want to make the most you can when it comes to memorizing, right? So you want to try and put in as much up here as you can. So anything you run across, there's valuable lessons in every song. You know, anything you learn, even as simple or as complex as the music might be, there's infinite amount of things you could focus on with it. So
yeah, I agree with that. So kind of a base here is, you know, the more songs we learn, obviously the better you're going to become, the better your ear's going to be. The more songs you learn, your ear is going to guess better, I guess, is a good way.
Oh, totally.
Another thing that I like to have my students do is write it out. Don't just try and remember G, C, E minor, D, and then remember the next. Write them down so you see them, you hear them, you look at them, you write them, you work all those different things that you had to do in school. People don't do that as they get older. You know, they're just like, okay, I can't remember anything. It's like, well, let's go back to what we used to do in school to help us remember. You would say them out loud. You would practicing for your spelling test. You would spell it to your mom or whatever. She's calling out your spelling words. But we forget that's what we used to do to learn and to remember things, and we don't do them anymore. So it's good for us as adults to go back to how did we used to learn when we actually used to learn.
Just to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can echo that sentiment too, just because it's like, it's tougher for me as time goes on.
Yeah.
Ain't none of us get any younger, right?
Yeah.
A younger person's mind can just soak up, information like a sponge. That's why, it's always great when you start as a kid, because it definitely gives you a slight advantage, but it is not impossible to learn as an older person. Right. It is just as achievable. It takes maybe just a different amount of work. It gets back to the thing of, everybody's going to be different when they do it. Some people are going to benefit from the writing, writing it down, seeing it. Yeah. Some people, I always get people to sing, and people don't like to do that, and I don't like to do that. I'm not a singer, okay? Right. I'm a terrible singer, okay? I'm comfortable in saying that. But what I can do, and what I try and get people to do, is just sing along to some of the stuff that you're playing.
Yeah.
Try and make that sound you just hear, that note you just hear it with your mouth, right? See how close you get. Because are you really hearing it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Kind of idea. It's like, you can't half-ass sing it. It's like, are you really hearing it? Or what is that note to you? Are you hearing that note? Or are you pressing that note and playing that note? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
It's like you kind of really want to, if you're getting into the ear training stuff, you got to listen, to where you start, like you say, you start noticing things. You start, even if it's, say, like a chord progression, this and that, but you'll hear it recycled from another song or something that sounds familiar to you, right?
Yeah.
Something that sounds familiar. That's a big one. Just, you want things, as your ear progresses, almost everything will start sounding familiar to you. You know what I mean? Because You've heard it places, and you'll hear something, you say, oh, that's a 2-5-1 chord change, or oh man, 6-5-4-1 right there. I can hear it all day. You know what I mean? You sit there and listen to. I play a lot of country music, pop country music and stuff. I can sit down and not say learn those songs perfect, but before the song's even done, I can write a chart out and have that. This is what's going on in that song. Now let's go back through and really get inside of it and figure out all the little licks, all the little stuff. But just being able to go through and hear and say, like, this is the verse, this is the chords of the chorus. And, that stuff is ear training. But a lot of that stuff comes from also just learning some basic music theory. I tell people this all the time. That basic music theory will help your ear, because you will start understanding what each note does in relation to that tonic note that you're basing everything off of, right?
Yeah.
It's like everything's kind of circling around our tonic note as if it's the sun in our solar system of music. So It's like understanding just how a fifth sounds, the fifth interval, right?
The relationship.
Sounds like the relationship. I went to college for music, and one of the first things they started doing, when you go to college for music, one thing that they don't do, they don't take all the guitar players and only put them with guitar players. And all the, saxophone players are in the rooms with oboists, and they're sitting here with guitar players and pianos, with drummers. We're all in the same room learning the same stuff. You know what I mean? And one of the very first things they started doing is they would sit down at a piano, they'd play a note, they'd say, this note is this. Then they'd play another note, and then they'd say, not what note is that, but how far away is that note from the first note? As in, is it a fifth away? Is it a minor second away? Is it a major third away? Hearing intervals, trying to hear intervals, as opposed to, thinking of things G, C, and D, right? Yeah. You want to start thinking of 1, 4, and 5. And that kind of stuff will definitely start helping your ear, because then you'll start relating everything back to these intervals, right? Yeah. All of a sudden, intervals and the distance between them is, what's, kind of really giving you some of the meat of your learning, of your listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that so super important. Huh?
I said I got off on a little bit of a tangent on that one. But
I do that all the time. But yeah, I agree. the interval relationships. Those are some of the first things that I usually focus on with anybody who's intermediate stage and trying to work their way up. I would say, and when I say intermediate, I mean you can play songs, you can play scales and maybe a little bit of lead. You kind of know what you're doing to an extent. It may feel like you just don't have any more knowledge than that. You can use what you know, and it sounds like music, but you feel, that's kind of where I put an intermediate player.
You don't feel like a musician. You feel like the guitar player right then. You know what I mean?
Yes. And
but you're stuff. You can make good sounds, but you're like, what's really going on? What's going on behind this?
What am I doing?
And as soon as people start asking that question is when I'm like, well, let's start talking about some music theory stuff. You know what I mean? Because it's the explanation. And one thing, I know I've been talking about some of that stuff, but one thing I always say too is, don't let too much of that music theory stuff weigh you down, because it's only there to explain the music.
Yeah.
And chicken and the egg kind of thing, which came first, the theory or the music? Well, this one has an answer, music. And then the theory is there to explain. It's not it can be used to compose and stuff like that, but it's really there for you to understand how these sounds are getting made so you can make them yourself,
All right, I hope you enjoyed that quick little session. It was a clip out of a much larger session that Seth and I did a little while back, and just pulling out some good nuggets that I think that you will find helpful. And what I want to do right here is a recap of everything that we talked about, or at least some of the bigger points that I want you to take away from this, okay, so that you can take them and use them in your own guitar playing. Remember, we were talking about becoming the kind of player who can just kind of jump into any situation, and it seems like you've been there already when you haven't. You might be playing a song that you've never heard before, but for some reason, somehow, you sound like you've played that song 100 times or 1,000,000 times or whatever. Well, that's not an accident. That does come over time, but there are some ways to go about that can make that happen for you sooner rather than later. So one of the first ones that I would like to remind you of is when Seth was talking about when he's in a situation like that, he's stealing ideas from all the other musicians around him, okay? When he jumps into a solo, that melodic line from the singer is a great idea to duplicate or mimic that and maybe make some slight adjustments to it. That's a big thing. And also the rhythmic idea of that. How are the notes spread apart? How fast are they? How long are they? Are there quick stops? What note types? Rhythmic ideas that the singer might be doing. But you also have your drummer. We talk about the drummer, a guitar player using that rhythm hand as a drum. A bass player, a bass line is always a fantastic way to take ideas, because the sound of the bass and the sound of the guitar are different. So if a guitar player does somewhat mimic a bass, it's still going to sound good, okay? Because that bass is a low lying note that people feel, as far as the listener goes, they feel it more than they hear it. Now, musicians, you get used to hearing it. You know what you're looking for. But as a normal listener, it's more of a feeling, an inner vibration. Versus the guitar is way up higher, and it's more of a I hear that loud, And so a guitar player using something from the bass player, another really good idea, okay? And then a mixture of those things. The singer, the bass, the drums, maybe the rhythm guitar, anything like that, a sax player, a piano, anything else, taking those ideas and reusing them is a great idea for you as a lead guitar player to just to come up with some really nice sounding ideas when you aren't really rehearsing. Okay, so another one that I really liked, and this is one that I use a lot with my students. And we didn't quite say it like this, but I'm going to say it like this here just to make it a little more clear, hopefully. Learn easy versions of many songs, okay? A lot of songs. Learn easy versions you can remember, and not the super intricate detail of every single riff and every single lick and every single lead part. Yeah, that's fine to learn things like that. But learn simple versions of many songs. Even if the song itself is actually difficult and hard, you just learn the chord progressions, a very simple chord progression that's lying underneath of many songs. That's going to train your ear to hear different progression types, okay, and what they sound like and how they're used, what styles they're used in and whatnot. This is going to be really, really big for you. Many songs, easy versions. Then you come back, and if there are actually harder songs than the version that you learn, you come back and you learn to add in small bits and pieces of the harder version, not the whole thing, but just bits and pieces of the harder version that you can still fit in there with your easy version and not stop playing. Okay, this is one reason why a lot of times when people are learning difficult songs piece by piece by piece by piece, they have a very hard time stringing it together. But if you learn the whole song in a very simple fashion, and then you just add in a couple of cool little lead details here and there, not all the lead details, just some, you'll end up with a really nice sounding version of that song, especially if you're doing like acoustic guitar or something like that. You can still play the song, and then you can still add some of those noticeable, memorable pieces from the lead or piano or what instrument or whatever those detailed pieces are being done by. How to add those in so that you have a little bit of, you have the whole song done, and then you have a little bit more difficult parts added in there. And then once you get that, you can come back again and add more. But this is going to help you to understand how they're using those pieces, over what chords, over what keys and whatnot, so that you can duplicate it and use it in other parts of your playing. So that's a really, really big tip right there. And the last thing that I just wanted to bring into this is theory. We talk about how important it is to learn theory. As you progress as a guitar player and you're starting to become a better player, get a little theory knowledge in there, okay? Just start out with some basic theory, major scale, the notes of the major scale, how to find them, and then what chords connect to those notes, and then how those chords will be used in keys and things like that. And then come back with the songs that you know or any songs that you're learning and pull the theory out of it. Find out what is happening theoretically from that song. This is how you can educate yourself in becoming a better player without a lot of outside help. Now, it definitely does help to have somebody else helping you to do that, because in the beginning especially, you will interpret something theoretically incorrectly. At the beginning, you oftentimes will interpret things incorrectly, and having a professional come back and say, yes, this is correct, good job, or this is not correct and this is why, that's going to help you to learn these things much more quickly versus you thinking that you're right and you're not. And then, a year or two down the road, then you figure out, or you never figure out that you're not right, okay? And that does happen. I've watched YouTube videos from people who are prominent YouTube people, and they'll sit there and go off on something and it's totally not correct. I'm not the kind of person that comments. I just let that kind of stuff go. But it's not helpful if you think you know something when you don't. Okay, so just get yourself a little bit of theory. Anyway, that's it for today, guys. We got another one coming at you very soon. So keep an eye out. I'm going to be posting it as soon as I possibly can, and it's going to be very helpful. We're going to be talking about some rhythm, which is key to your lead playing. Rhythm is actually key to lead playing, and we're going to get into that a little bit on the next one with some really cool tips for you with that. So I hope you've enjoyed this session. If we have said anything that you would like to learn more or hear more about or get more on, let me know. If you'd like me to talk more about it, if you'd like Seth to talk more about it, if you'd like us both to talk more about it, let us know. Leave us a comment. And of course, as always, if you can, give this video a like, and I'm going to see you very soon in the next video.